woke up today, BT, on the right side of the bed. It felt like not quite Christmas morning. It felt like Buckmas morning. Merry Buckmas, BT, as the season winds down here for the Mets. You know what I was thinking about this last couple of days here?
I'm not sure.
While we're talking about the football and Zach Wilson, obviously we have plenty of time to get into that and the Giants and their big game Monday night. But today it felt like a baseball day to me. And more specifically, I felt the need to come on and support my guy, Buck Showalter, because there seems to be this feel, and we've talked about this during the course of the season, maybe a few weeks back or months ago before baseball, that the Mets are going to make a change at the manager spot. It's been reported that it's still 50-50. We know even with Stearns coming in that Billy Epler is going to be here, but there hasn't been confirmation that Buck is. And I am here to tell you that if the Mets don't bring back Buck Showalter, they are making a huge mistake. You will do no better than Buck Showalter. This is not his fault. Has he been great this year? Absolutely not. Everybody deserves blame from the top on down. But Buck Showalter should be back with the Mets in 2024.
I didn't view Buck Showalter as an asset at all this season, quite frankly. I thought the Mets' fundamentals were atrocious. And I thought, and I, again, going back to the conversations we had in real time, even before you and I started working together, I think the thing that bothered me the most about Buck Showalter this year, and again, I probably should have prefaced it with great respect for him. I really do. We all do. Great baseball man, great person. But I think it's expired. So
what is expired?
His energy level. It was alarmingly low this year.
Well, what, like not yelling at...
No, I don't need the ranting and the raving just for the sake of ranting and raving or giving, fans a pound of flesh. The Mets, every night, they're getting plunked, hit batsmen.
Is that his fault, though, or you think the players are soft? Because I think the players are completely soft.
Yeah, no, listen, I do certainly believe at some point you've got to police yourself and get you guys back. There's no doubt. But, it was a stark contrast to the Buck Showalter that we saw the year before, who, the memes with the red face, top step of the dugout, barking, yelling, and the Mets reflected that. I just think that I think his time has passed a little bit. Not that he's lost his complete baseball sensibility. I don't mean that. But I look at the new direction of the Mets here, right? And if they're going to play a lot of these young kids, I would prefer that they play for Craig Counsell, who I believe is going to be the next manager of the Mets.
Isn't he under contract still, Counsell?
There's a way to. I don't think he is.
I'm not 100%
I don't
sure
believe that
that
he is. I think that he's. I think you can get him.
Let me just ask you the nuts and bolts. I can see the energy and the age and all that stuff. But do you think Craig Counsell knows more about baseball and more about being a manager than Buck Showalter?
I think he's a better modern day manager.
More relatable to the players.
I do. I think there's that. I think he's done more with less in terms of payroll. I just think he's better at this point. In 2023, I think he's better.
Who would you say is the Mets leader in their club? I know they don't have one, but if you had to pick one guy, who would you say?
If I had to pick one guy, that's been maybe the biggest problem with the Mets.
Right. All right. But if you had to pick one, I mean, there's only really two you could choose from.
Yeah. If I had to pick one, oh my God, I honestly don't know if like that I can. I mean, you want me to say Pete because of the home runs?
No,
you want me to say Lindor because of 30 for 30?
I was hoping you would say Lindor.
I don't think it's Lindor.
Okay. Well, it's either Lindor or Pete. Like, they don't have one, but it's either Lindor or Pete. And by the way, that's a whole nother part of the problem, the core and not having a leader, all that. But Lindor, because you're saying Buck is not relatable to players, and I'm saying that Lindor, their best player, that's not arguable. Lindor is their best all-around baseball player.
Yep.
Whether he's their clear leader or not, that you could argue. But Lindor is vouch for Buck every single second. Buck has made Lindor a better player, more comfortable player in New York. So if he's not relatable to players, well, then how come he's got the full support of Francisco Lindor?
Well, I didn't say that he's not relatable.
Scherzer wanted to play for him.
Yeah, no, I got you. I don't think he's as relatable as he used to be. And by the way, I think that there's other guys who underperformed this year. If we're going to illuminate Lindor and how he prospered this year, although even I think that's a bit overstated, which we'll get to later, I think that we need to also identify the guys who just either regressed or didn't do their job at all. We can't just pick and choose and say, well, one guy who's making $30-something million a year had a good season and make Buck Showalter out to be some genius.
But you think
he's
that's
not.
No, Buck.
And by the way, Aaron Judge the other day said similar things about Aaron Boone, and I disagree with Aaron Judge.
Right,
Just because a player says it doesn't mean it's true.
Agreed, but I'm just saying from the aspect of, Counsell's more relatable to the modern-day player. Well, no, not necessarily. I guess it depends on the player. By the way, Buck Showalter's knowledge is better than anybody in the game.
How do we prove that?
I mean, let me ask you something.
How do we prove that?
Well, he's been around the game forever, and he's had success every which way.
Okay, there's guys who've been on the radio for 30 years. That makes him the best?
No.
In every instance? Just because Buck is really good.
But if you had ratings, then yes.
I think Terry Francona's better. I know he's retiring. Terry's a better baseball mind. He is.
I'd rather have Buck Showalter.
I'd rather have Terry.
And look, well, you can nitpick there, but you can't tell me that Craig Counsell is on.
Well, I can't tell you Craig Counsell's the top 5 manager.
He might be. And I'm talking about knowledge of the game. History of the game, like actual, the rule book and the way the game is supposed to be managed. Now, I know the game has evolved. I think Buck has done a nice job evolving along the way. And I'll take it a step further. I think Buck Showalter is the biggest asset in their organization. Steve Cohen has the deepest pockets, and that's why we love him. King Cohen, all that. But if you ask me who I trust, just flat out baseball-wise, in the Mets organization, out of Stearns, out of Cohen, out of Epler, out of Buck, I like the other guys. Buck is number one.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that the other guy. I think I don't want to speak for you, but at least if I was to agree with that statement, okay, which I probably could
rule him out. Okay,
I probably could. I'm saying I don't think that's a crazy statement.
Longevity, success, the whole thing.
No, profound respect.
Right.
I love Buck. Buck's tremendous. But if I'm going to agree with the statement that Sal just said about being the biggest or the greatest asset, I can also then point to the other people that we're analyzing and say part of the reason Buck might be so obviously the greatest asset is because the other people have proven to be deficient in too many areas.
Maybe that's the case. Like Epler still needs to prove himself.
That's why I go with Stearns and I go with Craig.
So if I just ask you, do you trust David Stearns?
Absolutely.
Based on what? We don't know anything about
Based on the fact that with no payroll, they go to the playoffs every year.
But we've seen other guys do the same thing and fail in their new spots. Chaim Bloom comes to mind. I mean,
but you're not asking me about Chaim Bloom. You asked me about David Stearns.
For the record, I like Stearns, and I think it's the perfect hire, and I think it's going to work here. And ultimately, you're going to have to trust what he wants. I'm just saying that I trust Buck to do more with this team than I would anybody else.
Well, then why didn't he do anything with the team this year?
When
they couldn't win a game in May and June,
you're going to blame Buck Showalter for
I'm not going to absolve him. I'm not going to absolve him. He's the manager.
From Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer's ineptitude, guys getting hurt left and right, Pete Alonso's hitting 200, that's because of Buck Showalter? I mean, Francisco Lindor, a guy you're picking on, getting off to a slow start, that's on Buck?
I mean,
McNeil can't hit, that's on Buck?
When a guy wins a batting title and then the guy regresses to a 250 hitter, I can't completely absolve the manager. Now, listen, the players have to perform. I'm with you on that.
Right.
But if we're gonna prop up Buck for last year, you better believe he's got to take some dents for this year. That's just the way the game goes.
Agreed.
Always has, always will.
Agreed that he should take some dents for this year. Obviously, he has not done a great job. He's part of it. However, the Mets will be doing themselves a disservice as an organization if they move on, especially at this point. You want to say you ride it out one more year, Mets fail again next year, different story. His contract expires, fine. Right now, the Mets cannot do any better than Buck Showalter. BT and Sal on the Fan, our friends at Town Fair Tire. Remind you that at Town Fair Tire, you always get the guaranteed lowest price on name brand tires from Connecticut to Maine. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. Mike is calling from Massapequa. Mike?
Guys, how are you? Love the new show.
Thanks, Mike.
What's happening, Mikey?
Guys, I'm a diehard Mets fan, and this is a tough one, but, your screener asked me to take a stand, and I was going to. I agree with BT. I love Buck. I think Buck's an older manager, and I get what you're coming from, Sal, that, could you do better with him? But I'm going to put my faith in Steve Cohen, and the owner, who I think inevitably will change the franchise. And this is, again, I don't miss a game. I'm 50 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with Steve and think that, this is built for 2025.
But you don't know what Steve... First of all, there hasn't been a decision. So forget about what Steve Cohen is going to do or David Stearns is going to do. The question is, what would you do with Buck Showalter?
I'm telling you, I'm going to go with our owner because he says the team is built for 25. Buck will then be 2 years older. This is a team that really has to build around guys like Vientos and Blade Tidwell and guys that are coming up from the minors that are going to lead this team. And I think a young manager would connect. Buck had his shot. I think Buck is just a victim of circumstance. He's older. This is a team that's probably 2 years away, and I don't see Buck, as much as I love him and I'm a diehard Mets fan. I'm going to err with BT.
Okay. I mean, you're entitled. Thank you for the call. You're entitled for your opinion.
Thanks, Mike.
I mean, you don't want Buck back. That's fine. I understand that. I'm saying it's a mistake, a big mistake. I know once they hired Buck, and there was no bigger supporter on these airwaves than I was with Buck. Mary Buckmiss and all that stuff from the get-go. And I didn't believe they were going to make that decision, BT. I really didn't think they were going to do the right thing. At the time, it was, Matt Quattraro, all these analytical guys.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you have an opportunity to hire a real manager, one who's successful. Do it. Thankfully, they did. And once they did, then I didn't have to worry about the manager spot. I knew that they were better than, or at the very least, as good as anybody else. When they make the decision to move on from Buck, whether that's this year, whether it's next year, whatever, they will not be atop the league in managerial. Like, I'll be concerned about it, and I'll have a question mark on, okay, well, let's see what this guy can do. Right now, I don't have to worry about that. I think they need to bring Buck back.
Yeah, but I mean, here's the thing, too. I mean, and think about all the conversations we've had about the Jets and the Giants with their coaches, right? Daboll, we all strongly feel, is a great asset on game day for the Giants. Basically, no Jet fan right now looks at Robert Saleh as a great asset.
Still unproven, though.
Yes.
Daboll, even.
Daboll, agreed. And this could get a little bumpy, and we'll get back to football tomorrow for sure. But I think when you talk about a baseball manager, I mean, let's face it. I mean, I don't want to say what are you really doing, because that's oversimplifying and dumbing down the game that I love more than anything and have more respect for and knowledge of than any other sport that I possibly know and talk about. But the day-to-day impact of a baseball manager, you could fit in the thimble in contrast to a football coach.
Right.
So I am not hanging on the notion that Buck is some amazing strategist and like he's like a McVay type or an Andy Reid or is conceptually so advanced. I mean, it's baseball.
Right.
You get on base, you see the ball, you hit the ball, you run, you get on base, you run the bags hard. That's it. I mean, you know when to pull pitchers. It's not that hard.
Right, but
so I don't know what Buck is doing. Let me ask you this direct. What does he do that other baseball managers don't do? Because my answer is honestly nothing.
First of all, I mean, that's just ignorant.
But
what do you mean nothing?
What's your answer then?
Number one, he's smarter. I think.
How do you prove that?
He's been around the game forever. He's proven himself. I don't have to prove it. He's proven it himself.
He's also proven that he builds and that he crashes.
Oh,
I mean, and by the way, they crashed this year. So,
but that's not his fault.
But he's the manager. It can't be. It's got to be a little bit his fault.
All right. So, but you're going to give him credit for the year before that
100%.
when they overachieved significantly. It's the same talent.
Yes.
Essentially,
yes.
He took a team that was injured, by the way, at the time too last year. No DeGrom the majority of the year. Guys were not fully healthy. It wasn't a loaded roster. They won 101 ball games. Should have won the division.
Gave him great respect.
Okay.
Gave him great respect.
So this is a bad year. Obviously, he takes some of the blame. But Buck Showalter is as smart as anybody in baseball. Period. And by the way, I'm not the only one who thinks that.
Yeah, again, but that doesn't mean that they're right.
Correct.
I mean, we can yell, and trust me, we could both yell, but we can yell as loud as we want. If it's not provable, this one particularly is not.
But it is that he is, like, that's a fact.
But you're giving me length. You're not giving me actual substance.
What are you talking about? He's had success with the Yankees, with the Rangers, with the Orioles, with the Diamondbacks, with the Mets.
Understood. He's never even gotten to a World. You're gonna win a World Series.
But you're gonna
call the guy who's never won a World Series the smartest manager in baseball?
Was Patrick
that makes
Ewing
no
successful?
sense.
Was Patrick Ewing successful?
Yes, but Patrick Ewing's not one of the greatest centers.
Yes, he is.
Wilt, Kareem, Shaq, Russell, stop.
Ewing is still up there, that.
But he's not even top 5, 6, or 7.
The other thing, I'm not saying he's the greatest manager of all time, but right now in baseball, I put him against anybody else. The other thing, BT, and this is where I'm surprised at you.
Go ahead.
What exactly are we questioning Robert Saleh for over the last couple of days? One thing that he does not do with his players.
Control, messaging,
holding
honesty, transparency. Yeah, for sure.
Buck does that.
But did he?
Yes.
When they were hemorrhaging and they were losing every night, it looked at his press conferences. I thought I was at a funeral. And I watched every one of those pressers on SNY. Every one. And again, I like Buck, but I'm sitting there watching. I'm saying, this guy's asleep. This guy looks like he's in a coma. Buck. Hey, Buck, is the camera up? Buck, wake up, buddy. Your team hasn't won in 2 weeks. You going to wake up? He didn't say anything.
He knew the team was a dead team walking once they lost Diaz. He's taught these guys how to be professionals. I trust them. I mean, look, I think the Mets are making a huge mistake here if they let Buck Showalter go. Nick is calling from Hoboken. Nick?
What's going on, guys? Great show as always. But you guys, yesterday, it's BT contradicting. Now it's Sal. Like, both of you guys talked about the Jets and the Mets coaches, and yesterday you talked about it a lot. Culture. How was the culture set? Let's go back to the Mets last year. They won 101 games. Second half of the season, they fell off a cliff and got embarrassed by the Braves.
No, they didn't.
On top of that,
no. Hold on a second. If you're going to come on, and I respect your opinion, you have plenty of time here. The Mets did not fall off a cliff last year. They won 101 games. No, they didn't. They didn't. They never fell off a cliff. They struggled a little bit in September. They won 101 games and lost the division on a tiebreaker. So they had a bad series getting swept in Atlanta. You said they fell off a cliff. That is just not accurate.
Okay. All right. So they've slid. They've slid since September of last year. Now we're here. Guys got hit all the time. Buck didn't stick up for his players. I'm just trying to make this. I'm in agreement with you with Salah. Like, the culture with the Jets is shot. The culture with the Mets now is also shot. So they have to retool in any way possible. And the coach, for better or for worse, I like Buck too. Great baseball guy, great for the game. His time has just run out with New York, unfortunately, and that's just the way it's got to go. You got to bring in some sort of lightning bolt to galvanize these guys again. The culture is just not there. We talk about it every day on the radio.
Yeah,
so,
well, we did when we really hit the Yanks and the Mets every single day because the Yanks and the Mets imploded so early. We moved the football fast, and that's getting ripped out beneath our feet as well by the minute here, Sal. Yeah, I mean, listen, I think maybe if the Mets were if they were at a different place roster-wise, I'd have no problem running this back with Buck. I really wouldn't. Like, I'm not saying that Buck is a detriment. By no means. I'm just saying that he's not the asset that you and others perceive him to be. They've got to really get somebody, in my opinion, and Craig Counsell is a free agent, and he knows Stearns. You got to get somebody who's going to be here 6, 7, 8, 9 years and build these young kids, build them up, and get that gelling from minute one. And that's what I would do.
Let me ask you something. If Buck was available, let's say the Mets decide to fire Buck Showalter, he's available.
Yes.
You rather have Buck or Aaron Boone?
For the Yankees, for the Yankees, I'd rather have Aaron Boone at this point. But here's the thing, Sal. First of all, I'd rather have neither. I mean, to be clear.
Right.
But I also know if Buck Showalter was given a 35-year-old, broken down, over the hill, shot Giancarlo Stanton, and he didn't have Aaron Judge for 2 months because those stupid idiot Dodgers didn't have their wall fixed, and he had all the injuries. Again, I don't think Boone's anything special, and I like Buck more than Boone. But the point being, the circumstances of the roster and what the GM gives you matters. Now, I don't think Buck was given a great roster this year. I think it was largely overstated, which is one of the reasons why I thought and I said this, there was a real chance I thought the Mets would miss the playoffs this year. But that doesn't mean that I would compound it as I look to turn the page and change the culture. This season, at various points, was so alarmingly ugly and inept and almost indifferent from the players, from what they admitted. I got to turn the page. I'm moving on. I'm not bringing Buck back.
BT and Sal on the Fan will continue with your calls on the other side. 877-337-6666.